Chapter 1: The Lost Boy. The brisk evening air swept across the darkened beachside, carrying the scent of fresh salt to the boy's nostrils. He stared out to sea from his overlook by the stone house, watching the moon's reflection on the waves. It was a perfectly peaceful night. Only wisps of excited chatter from down on the beach disturbed the serenity. Faint silhouettes scurried about in the shadow of the lighthouse. A lone flicker of flame broke through the darkness. It bobbed as its carrier stumbled about in search of the fuse. The boy sighed and turned his head. They had to be out of their minds. Being caught in the kitchen without Matron's supervision was already enough to land them in serious trouble. Swiping the matches and fireworks set aside for the new year was on a level yet unheard of. Morbid curiosity alone kept him standing there. They'd invited him to take part in the night's mischief. Perhaps 2 months earlier he would have even accepted. He'd have gone merrily bounding down the sandy trail with the others, throwing all caution to the wind for the chance to light his own firecracker. There was no such joy now. Even as he saw sparks fly from the lit fuse, there was only emptiness. Nothing could fill the gaping hole in his heart. Not the peaceful night, not the soothing breeze, nor the view from which to watch the spectacle unfold. He needed to be strong, just as Matron had told him. He could always count on her to know the right thing to do. The fireworks whistle cut through the calm like a piercing siren. Higher and higher it climbed, its tail tracing a swath across the sky. It burst into a dazzling splash of green moments later. The explosion rocked the beachside, giving way to a chorus of cheers below, and a single shrieking cry from just behind him.
I'm telling!
The boy whipped his head over his shoulder. Right on cue, the orphanage's resident tattletale came bolting from the house. He tore down the path to the shore as fast as his little legs would carry him.
You all are gonna be in so much trouble,
he called. The second rocket drowned out whatever else he shouted to them. He needn't have bothered. Between the sheer volume of both explosions, this one producing a crimson shower of stars, Matron would be out to deal with them shortly. There was nothing for this loud-mouthed brat to gain by sticking his nose where it didn't belong. He'd already been branded an outcast among them. Keeping his mouth shut would have suited him better. Trying to weasel his way back into the group was a sign of weakness. Disgusted, the boy made his silent vow.
I'm never gonna be like him. I don't need anyone's help. I'm gonna be strong, and I'm gonna do it on my own.
What did you say? Say that to my face.
Squall shut his eyes in frustration. He couldn't stand to face the foul-mouthed blonde another moment. They'd never gotten along. The 1-year age gap between them was the only buffer Squall had from Cypher's constant abuse. He couldn't imagine how much torment the 6th-year students who shared classes with him received on the daily. Neither did he care. His own suffering was all that concerned him. He exhaled through his nose to soothe his rising temper and opened his eyes.
I didn't say anything, you jerk. Leave me alone.
Squall turned down the hall towards his next class. He'd barely taken 3 steps before a hand caught his wrist from behind.
Is that how you talk to your upperclassmen? Sounds like someone needs to teach you some manners.
Cypher snarled as he spun him back around. He yanked his arm upward, drawing him into where their faces were mere inches from one another. Squall flitted his eyes as he struggled in place. A circle of students slowly formed around the two, muttering in anticipation of a fight.
Let him go, Cypher.
The two averted their heated stares from one another. A familiar 6-year girl with glasses and blonde pigtails stepped forward from the crowd. Her furrowed eyebrows and pursed lips painted a clear picture of disapproval. It was the same no-nonsense look she routinely gave Cypher whenever he stepped out of line. The smug boy returned it with a scowl.
Shut up, Quistis, and mind your own business. This is between me and him. Stay out of it.
He turned his attention back to Squall, his lips curling into a sardonic smile.
Unless the little wuss is too scared to back up his tough talk, you need Big Nose Quisty to tag in for you?
Squall lowered his eyes to the polished floor, his free fist balled in anger. He could no longer contain his hatred for the belligerent blonde.
Get your smelly-ass breath out of my face.
Squall muttered, gathering spit at the back of his throat.
What did you say, you little punk?
Squall didn't flinch. In one swift snap of his head, he spat. The loogie smacked dead center on Cypher's nose with a wet splat. Cypher's eyes went wide. The crowd's collective gasp broke into scattered laughter and guffaws. The moment's victory lasted all of 3 seconds before Cypher's fist buried itself in his gut. Squall doubled over. Air punched from his lungs and was shoved hard to the floor. The crowd's roar melted into white noise as adrenaline flooded his body. He braced for the inevitable hail of fists until one voice cut through it all, sharp and unmistakable.
Almacy!
It roared and echoed throughout the garden halls. The erupting pandemonium fell silent. Squall creaked open his eyes to peer upward. A middle-aged man with a neatly combed haircut and trimmed mustache had seized Cypher's wrist. Despite having never taken one of his classes, Instructor Aki's reputation transcended the divide between grade levels. His strict and stodgy persona had made him infamous among the entire student body.
Come with me to my office at once. Trip, see him to the infirmary. The rest of you, to your classes on the double.
The crowd immediately dispersed in all directions. Instructor Aki turned away, forcibly dragging Cypher down the hall towards his office. Squall sat upright and placed a hand to his gut. The spot was sore and likely bruised beneath his shirt, but not so painful he would need to see the garden medical staff. Quistis dropped to her knees beside him, her eyes brimming with concern.
Are you okay?
It's nothing. I've been through worse in training.
What was that all about anyway?
Don't worry about it. It's none of your business.
It is when I have to take you to the infirmary. If he keeps picking on you, let me know and I'll make sure something's done about it.
I don't need your help. And I don't need to go to the infirmary either.
He rose from the floor and turned his back to her. Much as Cypher infuriated him, her patronizing was hardly an improvement. He shuffled away down the hall towards his next class, as Quistis let out a frustrated sigh. A successive clanging of steel rang out across the Alcod Plains. Many miles of lush forest led the way north to the Galg Mountains, their peaks still topped with residual snow. To the south, rolling green stretched toward the sea. At the center of it all loomed the gleaming, conch-shaped structure of Garden, its floating halo shimmering blue and gold in the dawn. Atop a rocky plateau due just north, a pair of swordsmen stood locked in a fearsome duel. The boys had become young men. Each slash and parry attested to the years both had spent furthering their skill with the blade. Their speed and precision more than made up for whatever their movements lacked in grace. The intensity with which they flung themselves at each other was evident, the bloodlust between them palpable. This was no friendly sparring, but a grudge match. It was a challenge Squall couldn't have refused even if he wanted. Though he despised the reputation he shared with Cypher, he could never back down. To show weakness was to be stripped of his anatomy. That was a fate he deemed worse than death. Squall brought his gunblade thundering down, only for Cypher to sidestep out of harm's way. The blonde swiped past him, knocking him off balance. He quickly regained his footing and swiveled around. Cypher's boots skidded to a halt on the opposite end of the gravelly terrain, his own gunblade resting at his side. His face wore the same familiar smirk that had provoked him for so long. It reaffirmed louder than any taunt that his struggle was in vain. Squall's fingers twitched. He had one advantage Cypher refused to match, not from weakness, but from stubborn pride. Honor, sportsmanship, those were luxuries for fools. He spread his stance, free hand outstretched. Cypher's smirk faltered into a scowl. Squall focused, willing the heat to rise in his palm, but nothing came. His pulse spiked. Something was wrong. Cypher didn't waste the opening. He lifted his own hand while an orange light ignited into a sphere of a roaring flame. Squall froze. He barely raised his blade in time as the fireball slammed against him, heat searing his face before blasting him to the ground. He tried forcing himself back to his feet. As he rose to one knee, his downcast eyes met a pair of black boots and the whipping coattails of a long gray jacket.
What a disgrace.
A snide voice derided him. Squall tilted his head up to meet the face of his rival. His eyes went wide as he saw Cypher's gunblade raised high over his head, ready to fall like a guillotine. Time slowed to a crawl. His mind screamed in alarm, begging him to leap for cover. His legs refused to comply. He simply couldn't right himself quickly enough. He opened his mouth to cry out, but the blade fell before he could utter a sound. It passed between his eyes, cleaving a diagonal slice across the bridge of his nose. He screamed as the force twisted his head to the side, his neck on the verge of snapping. Blood splattered across the rock below as the blade left his flesh. The pain was beyond Squall had ever known. His face was on fire. He grit his teeth in anguish, seething with an uncontrollable rage as the blood spilled down his features. All was red. He could no longer form a coherent thought, much less curse Cypher for subjecting him to such agony. All he cared for in that moment was vengeance at any cost. Acting purely on instinct, he slashed his own gunblade upward with a roar of righteous fury. The scream to follow finally snapped him from his trance. Cypher doubled over as he stumbled backward. He clutched at his face with both hands, his sword dropping to the ground with a metallic clang. Squall allowed his own to fall from his grasp. His vision cleared as his rational mind returned. He brought one hand up to cover the wound between his eyes and fumbled for the supply pouch on his belt with the other. Just as he'd located the zipper, a fist slammed down on the back of his head. He toppled to the ground, face first. The bludgeoning continued, endlessly, mercilessly. As the world around him slowly faded away, a single affirmation crept in his mind. It was a mantra long since internalized, and now more applicable than ever before.
That's just how it goes. The world isn't fair. It's cruel. And everyone faces it on their own.